Welcome to the Sleep Library, where we journey through history's most fascinating yet peaceful stories. Tonight, we drift back over 3,000 years to ancient Egypt, to the sacred city of Memphis, where a remarkable group of priest scholars devoted their lives to understanding the mysterious language of dreams. In a world where the boundary between sleep and waking was considered thin and permeable, these dedicated interpreters served as bridges between the human and divine realms. Their gentle wisdom, preserved in countless papyrus scrolls and stone inscriptions, offers us a window into one of history's most sophisticated approaches to understanding the messages that visit us in our sleep. So settle in comfortably, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to be transported to the sun-drenched temples of Memphis, where every dream was considered sacred, and every night held the possibility of divine communication. This is the story of the ancient Egyptian dream interpreters of Memphis, holding their own unhurried, contemplative pace in the gentle morning light that falls across the ancient ruins of Memphis. We begin our journey into a world where dreams were not merely the wanderings of a sleeping mind, but sacred messages from the gods themselves. Memphis, the great capital of ancient Egypt, stood at the convergence of the Nile Delta and the river valley, a place where the physical and spiritual worlds seemed to touch with unusual clarity. The year is approximately 1350 BCE, during the reign of the 18th dynasty. The sun rises slowly over the white limestone walls of the great temple complexes, casting long shadows across the sacred precincts, where the dream interpreters of Memphis would soon begin their daily rituals. These were not common fortune tellers or street mystics, but highly trained priests who had devoted their entire lives to understanding the language of dreams. Memphis itself was a city built for eternity. Its very name, Emen-Nefer, meant enduring and beautiful, and within its boundaries lived some of the most learned men in the ancient world. The dream interpreters, known as the servants of the night visions, held a special place in this scholarly community. They were part priest, part physician, and part scholar, trained in the ancient arts of dream analysis that had been passed down through generations of temple scribes. The temple complex where these interpreters worked was located in the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Djoser at nearby Saqqara. The building itself was constructed of fine limestone, with walls decorated with hieroglyphic texts that recorded thousands of dream symbols and their meanings. Papyrus scrolls filled countless storage rooms, each one containing carefully recorded dreams and their interpretations, creating what was perhaps the world's first systematic dream database. The daily routine of a dream interpreter began before dawn. As the first light touched the eastern horizon, these priests would purify themselves in the sacred pools adjacent to the temple. The ritual cleansing involved multiple immersions in water that had been blessed by the high priests of PTH, the created god of Memphis. This purification was essential, for the interpreters believed that only a clean body and pure heart could properly receive and understand the messages that came through dreams. After purification, the interpreters would don their simple white linen robes, the traditional garment of Egyptian priests. These robes were woven from the finest flax and were replaced daily to maintain ritual purity. Around their necks, they wore small amulets depicting the Eye of Horus, a symbol of divine protection and insight. In their hands, they carried reed pens and small wooden palettes containing black and red ink, the tools of their scholarly trade. The dream interpretation chamber was a rectangular room approximately 30 feet long and 20 feet wide. The walls were covered with hieroglyphic texts arranged in neat columns, each symbol painted with meticulous care. The ceiling was decorated with stars and constellation patterns, creating the impression that one was lying beneath the night sky itself. Small oil lamps burned continuously in bronze holders mounted on the walls, providing a soft, flickering light that never fully illuminated the space, maintaining an atmosphere of gentle mystery. At the center of the chamber stood a low limestone table, its surface polished smooth by centuries of use. Upon this table were arranged the tools of interpretation: several papyrus scrolls containing dream dictionaries, wooden figurines representing various gods and goddesses, small bowls of incense, and a collection of smooth stones used for divination. The most important item, however, was the Dream Book of Memphis, a massive papyrus scroll that contained over 2,000 recorded dreams and their meanings, compiled over several generations of interpreters. The process of becoming a dream interpreter was lengthy and rigorous. Young boys, usually the sons of priests or scribes, were selected around the age of 8 based on their ability to remember their own dreams in vivid detail. These chosen children would spend the next 12 to 15 years in intensive training, learning not only the art of dream interpretation, but also becoming proficient in reading and writing hieroglyphs, understanding human anatomy and medicine, memorizing religious texts, and studying the movements of celestial bodies. The training began with learning to categorize different types of dreams. Egyptian dream interpreters recognized several distinct categories: prophetic dreams that foretold future events, healing dreams that diagnosed illness or suggested treatments, divine dreams where gods communicated directly with mortals, warning dreams that alerted the dreamer to potential dangers, and guidance dreams that offered advice for important decisions. Students spent years memorizing the standard interpretations for common dream symbols. Water, for example, could represent purification, fertility, or the journey to the afterlife, depending on its context within the dream. Animals each had specific meanings. Hats represented protection and domestic harmony. Crocodiles symbolized hidden dangers, and birds often indicated messages from the spirit world. The interpretation of any symbol, however, depended heavily on the dreamer's social status, current life circumstances, and the overall narrative structure of the dream itself. The dream interpreters of Memphis also maintained detailed records of seasonal patterns in dreams. They observed that certain types of dreams occurred more frequently during specific times of the year, corresponding to the agricultural cycle of ancient Egypt. During the flood season, when the Nile overflowed its banks and covered the land, dreams of water and fertility were common. During the harvest season, dreams often involved themes of abundance or scarcity, reflecting the community's concerns about food supply for the coming year. The physical environment of Memphis contributed to the unique character of dreams experienced by its inhabitants. The city was built on a floodplain, and the water table was quite high, meaning that many buildings had to be constructed on raised foundations. The constant sound of water moving through irrigation channels and the humid air rising from the nearby marshes created an atmosphere that seemed to encourage vivid and memorable dreams. The dream interpreters understood that the location where a dream occurred could influence its meaning. Dreams experienced within temple grounds were considered more sacred and more likely to contain direct divine communications. Dreams that occurred during travel were often interpreted as guidance for the journey ahead. Dreams experienced during illness were carefully analyzed for clues about treatment and recovery prospects. Memphis was also home to a significant foreign population, including Nubians, Libyans, and peoples from the Eastern Mediterranean. The dream interpreters had to develop methods for understanding and interpreting dreams that contained foreign symbols or reflected cultural backgrounds different from traditional Egyptian beliefs. This multicultural aspect of Memphis dream interpretation made it one of the most sophisticated and comprehensive systems of dream analysis in the ancient world. The scribes who worked alongside the dream interpreters maintained meticulous records of each consultation. These records included not only the content of the dream and its interpretation, but also detailed information about the dreamer, their age, occupation, family status, current health, and recent significant events in their life. Follow-up notes were often added months or even years later, documenting whether the interpreter's predictions had come to pass. creating an early form of empirical validation for their methods.
As the sun climbed higher into the morning sky, casting its light through the clerestory windows of the interpretation chamber, the dream interpreters of Memphis would prepare for their first clients of the day. The gentle rustle of papyrus scrolls, the soft scratching of reed pens on writing surfaces, and the quiet murmur of priestly conversations created an atmosphere of scholarly dedication that had remained unchanged for centuries. This was a world where every dream mattered, where the boundary between sleeping and waking consciousness was understood to be permeable, and where a class of devoted specialists worked tirelessly to help their fellow citizens understand the messages that came to them in the depths of sleep. In Memphis, the city of enduring beauty, the dream interpreters served as bridges between the human and divine worlds, offering guidance, comfort, and wisdom to all who sought their counsel. The ancient Egyptians understood sleep not as a simple biological necessity, but as a sacred journey into the realm of the gods. In the temples of Memphis, this understanding reached its most sophisticated expression through the careful study and practice of what the priests called the sacred art of sleep. This was far more than merely lying down and closing one's eyes. It was a ritualized process designed to facilitate meaningful communication with the divine world. The concept of sleep in ancient Egyptian theology was intimately connected with their understanding of death and rebirth. Each night, as a person fell asleep, their soul was believed to undertake a journey similar to that taken by the deceased in the afterlife. The sleeping person's or spiritual essence would leave the physical body and travel through various realms, encountering gods, spirits, and the souls of the departed. Dreams were the conscious memories of these nightly journeys. In Memphis, the dream interpreters had developed elaborate techniques for preparing both body and mind for sacred sleep. The process began several hours before sunset with what they called the evening purification. Those seeking prophetic or healing dreams would first bathe in water mixed with natron, the same mineral salt used in mummification. This cleansing was believed to remove not only physical impurities, but also spiritual contaminations that might interfere with clear divine communication. After bathing, the seekers would dress in clean white linen garments that had never been worn before. These clothes were specially woven by temple craftswomen using thread that had been blessed during the new moon ceremony. The fabric was so fine and soft that it barely seemed to touch the skin, creating minimal physical distraction during the sleep process. The sleeping chambers within the Memphis Dream Complex were architectural marvels designed specifically to enhance the dreaming experience. Each chamber was oriented precisely along cardinal directions, with the head of the sleeping platform facing east toward the rising sun and the realm of rebirth. The walls were covered with painted scenes depicting the journey of the soul through the underworld, serving as visual guides for the dreaming consciousness. The sleeping platforms themselves were carved from single blocks of limestone and covered with layers of the finest linen cushions filled with goose down. The height of each platform was carefully calculated based on the sleeper's stature, ensuring that their body would be positioned at exactly the right level to receive optimal spiritual influences. Small channels carved around the edges of each platform allowed for the circulation of incense smoke, which was kept burning throughout the night at a barely perceptible level. The dream interpreters of Memphis had identified numerous factors that influenced the quality and content of dreams. The phase of the moon was considered crucial, with the new moon being optimal for receiving prophetic visions and the full moon best for healing dreams. The seasons also played a role, with the flood season being most favorable for dreams of fertility and renewal, while the harvest season was best for dreams providing practical guidance. Temperature control within the sleeping chambers was maintained through an ingenious system of air shafts and underground channels that connected to the nearby Nile. Cold air would be drawn up from underground chambers during the hot summer months, while in winter, the stone walls would radiate the warmth they had absorbed during the day. This careful climate control ensured that physical discomfort would not interfere with the dreaming process.
The preparation for sacred sleep also involved dietary considerations.
Those seeking meaningful dreams would follow a prescribed eating regimen for 3 days before their temple sleep. The diet consisted primarily of bread made from emmer wheat, fresh fish from the Nile, and vegetables grown in the temple gardens. Certain foods were strictly forbidden, including red meat, fermented beverages, and anything that contained too much salt or spice, as these were believed to create spiritual turbulence that would cloud dream imagery.
The role of scent in facilitating sacred sleep was extensively studied by the Memphis priests.
Different combinations of incense were used depending on the type of dream being sought.
For prophetic dreams, they burned frankincense mixed with myrrh and powdered lapis lazuli.
For healing dreams, the mixture included herbs from the temple medicinal garden, chamomile, lotus petals, and dried papyrus flowers. For dreams seeking guidance in matters of the heart, rose petals and acacia blossoms were added to the blend. Music also played a subtle but important role in the sacred sleep process.
Soft, repetitive melodies were played on wooden flutes and small harps during the period just before sleep. These musical phrases were specifically composed to slow the heart rate and quiet the conscious mind.
The melodies were based on mathematical ratios that the Egyptian priests believed were harmonious with the fundamental vibrations of the universe. The dream interpreters themselves underwent special preparation before attending to those seeking sacred sleep.
They would fast for 24 hours before beginning their duties, consuming only water and a small amount of honey at sunset.
This fasting was believed to sharpen their spiritual sensitivity and make them more receptive to the subtle energies surrounding the dreaming process.
During the night hours, the interpreters would maintain a vigil outside each sleeping chamber, listening carefully for signs of significant dream activity.
They were trained to recognize different types of sleep sounds, quiet murmurs that indicated communication with benevolent spirits, restless movements suggesting dreams of conflict or warning, and the deep stillness that accompanied the most profound spiritual visions. When a dreamer showed signs of particularly intense dream activity, the attending interpreter would make careful notes about the timing, duration, and apparent intensity of the dream. They would also record environmental factors such as the exact position of stars visible through the chamber's skylight, the direction and strength of wind, and any unusual sounds or activities occurring in the temple complex during the night. The moment of awakening was considered as crucial as the dreaming itself. The Memphis interpreters had developed specific protocols for the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Dreamers were never awakened abruptly, as this was believed to damage the fragile connection between the dream world and waking consciousness. Instead, soft chimes would be rung at gradually increasing intervals, allowing the dreamer to surface naturally from sleep.
Upon awakening, dreamers were encouraged to remain still and silent for several minutes, allowing the dream memories to solidify in their conscious mind. They were then offered a drink of water mixed with honey and lotus extract, which was believed to help preserve dream memories and make them easier to recall during the interpretation session that would follow.
The physical posture during sleep was also carefully prescribed. Dreamers were instructed to lie on their backs with arms crossed over their chest in the manner of the god Osiris. This position was believed to align the sleeper's energy with that of the divine realm and to facilitate the soul's journey during dreams.
Small amulets were often placed at specific points on the body, an ankh symbol over the heart for life force, an eye of Horus on the forehead for spiritual sight, and a jade pillar at the feet for stability during the soul's travels.
The Memphis dream temples maintained detailed records of the relationship between sleeping conditions and dream content.
They observed that dreamers who slept during certain lunar phases consistently experienced particular types of visions.
Those who slept during the night of the new moon often had dreams of new beginnings and fresh opportunities. Those who chose the night of the full moon frequently received dreams with powerful emotional content or clear prophetic imagery. Seasonal variations in dream content were also carefully documented.
During the flood season, when the Nile overflowed its banks and renewed the fertility of the land, dreamers commonly experienced visions related to birth, growth, and renewal. During the dry season, dreams often focused on preservation, conservation, and preparation for the future.
The dream interpreters of Memphis also understood the importance of the dreamer's expectations and beliefs in shaping dream content. Those who came to the temple expecting to receive guidance about specific problems often did indeed have dreams that addressed their concerns, though not always in the direct manner they anticipated. The priests taught that the gods preferred to communicate through symbols and metaphors rather than literal images, requiring skilled interpretation to understand their true meaning. The sacred sleep chambers were considered so holy that they required daily purification rituals, even when not in use. Each morning, the rooms would be swept clean with brooms made from palm fronds. The air would be refreshed with burning sage, and fresh white sand would be sprinkled on the floors to absorb any lingering spiritual influences from the previous night's dreams.
As dawn approached and the first light began to filter through the eastern windows of the dream complex, the sacred art of sleep would gradually give way to the equally important work of interpretation.
The dreamers, refreshed by their night's spiritual journey, would prepare to share their visions with the trained priests who would help them understand the messages they had received from the realm of the gods. The Memphis Dream Interpretation Complex represented one of ancient Egypt's most sophisticated architectural achievements, designed specifically to facilitate communication between the human and divine realms through the medium of dreams. Construction of the main complex began during the 4th dynasty, approximately 2600 BCE, and continued to expand over the following millennium, eventually covering an area of nearly 8 acres within the sacred precinct of the Temple of PTH. The entire complex was oriented according to precise astronomical calculations, with the main axis running from east to west to align with the path of the sun god Eye across the sky. This orientation was believed to channel solar energy into the dream chambers during the day, storing it within the limestone walls to provide spiritual warmth throughout the night hours when the sun traveled through the underworld. The entrance to the complex faced east, toward the rising sun and the direction of rebirth and renewal. Visitors would first encounter a massive limestone gateway, its surface is covered with carved hieroglyphs describing the various types of dreams and their divine origins. The gateway was flanked by 2 colossal statues of Thoth, the god of wisdom and divine communication, each carved from a single block of red granite quarried from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. Beyond the entrance gateway lay the court of preparation, a large rectangular courtyard surrounded by covered colonnades. This space served as a gathering area for those seeking dream interpretation services, allowing them to prepare mentally and spiritually for their temple experience. The courtyard was paved with perfectly fitted limestone blocks, each one inscribed with protective symbols and prayers for clear spiritual vision. At the center of the court of preparation stood a circular pool, approximately 20 feet in diameter, carved from black granite and filled with water from a sacred spring that was believed to be connected to the primordial waters of creation. Those seeking dream interpretation would walk 7 times around this pool in a clockwise direction, pausing at each cardinal point to offer brief prayers to the gods responsible for dream communication. The colonnades surrounding the courtyard provided shelter from the intense Egyptian sun while allowing air to circulate freely. The columns themselves were masterworks of ancient engineering, each one carved to represent a different aspect of the dream experience. Some columns were decorated with spiraling patterns representing the journey of the soul during sleep, while others featured reliefs showing the various gods and goddesses who appeared most frequently in dreams.
From the court of preparation, visitors would proceed through a second gateway into the Hall of Records, the administrative heart of the dream interpretation complex.
This rectangular chamber, measuring approximately 60 feet long and 30 feet wide, housed the extensive library of dream texts that had been accumulated over centuries of careful observation and documentation. The walls of the Hall of Records were lined with wooden shelving units reaching from floor to ceiling, each shelf carefully designed to protect the precious papyrus scrolls from moisture, insects, and temperature fluctuations. The scrolls were organized according to a sophisticated cataloging system that allowed the interpreters to quickly locate relevant texts during consultation sessions.
The most important section of the library contained the Master Dream Dictionaries, massive texts that provided standard interpretations for thousands of dream symbols.
These dictionaries were constantly updated as new observations were made and recorded. Scribes worked daily to copy and recopy these texts, ensuring that multiple versions existed to protect against loss or damage. Adjacent to the Hall of Records was the Chamber of Consultation, where the actual dream interpretation sessions took place. This room was designed to promote a sense of calm contemplation and spiritual connection. The walls were painted in soft earth tones, with decorative friezes depicting peaceful scenes from Egyptian daily life. Farmers working in fields, fishermen on the Nile, craftsmen practicing their trades. The consultation chamber contained a series of low divans arranged around a central area where the interpreter would sit during sessions. Each divan was oriented to face east, allowing the person describing their dream to look toward the direction of sunrise and renewal while recounting their nocturnal visions.
Soft linen cushions filled with goose down provided comfort during what could be lengthy interpretation sessions. The ceiling of the consultation chamber was perhaps its most remarkable feature, painted with an accurate star map showing the night sky as it appeared over Memphis during different seasons of the year. This celestial chart served both as a reference for interpreters who needed to consider astronomical influences on dream content, and as a visual reminder of the connection between earthly dreams and cosmic forces.
Moving deeper into the complex, visitors would encounter the sacred sleep chambers, the most holy area of the entire facility. These 12 individual rooms were arranged in a semicircle around a central sanctuary, each chamber designed to accommodate a single dreamer seeking direct divine communication through their dreams.
The chambers were numbered according to the months of the Egyptian year, allowing interpreters to assign dreamers to rooms that corresponded with their birth month or the timing of their spiritual need.
Each sleep chamber was constructed as a miniature temple in itself, complete with its own entrance ritual and purification requirements.
The walls were carved from the finest limestone and polished to a smooth finish that seemed to glow in lamplight. The ceiling of each chamber featured a unique astronomical design, showing the constellations that were visible during a specific month of the year.
The sleeping platforms within these chambers were engineering marvels, designed to provide optimal physical comfort while maintaining spiritual significance. Each platform was carved from a single block of limestone and shaped to support the human body in a position that Egyptian priests believed was most conducive to receiving divine dreams.
The platforms were angled slightly toward the east, so that the first rays of dawn would fall across the sleeper's face, providing a natural and gentle awakening. Below each sleeping chamber, a complex system of air channels had been carved into the bedrock, connecting to underground chambers that maintained constant temperature and humidity levels. These channels also carried the subtle sense of incense that was burned in a central underground chamber, allowing aromatic smoke to circulate gently through all the sleeping areas simultaneously. The central sanctuary, located at the focus of the semicircular arrangement of sleep chambers, contained the most sacred objects associated with dream interpretation at Memphis.
Here stood a statue of Serapis, a Greco-Egyptian deity who was particularly associated with healing dreams and prophetic visions.
The statue, carved from dark green basalt, showed the god in a reclining position with his eyes closed, as if he too were engaged in the sacred act of dreaming. Before this statue burned the eternal flame of dreams, a fire that had been maintained continuously for over 500 years.
The flame was fed with a special mixture of aromatic woods and resins that produced a clean burning, nearly smokeless fire. The light from this flame was believed to guide the souls of dreamers during their nightly journeys and to provide protection from malevolent spirits who might try to interfere with divine communication. The architectural acoustics of the dream complex had been carefully planned to enhance the spiritual atmosphere.
Sound traveled in subtle ways throughout the building, so that the gentle chanting of priests in the central sanctuary could be heard faintly in all the sleep chambers, providing a comforting background that helped induce restful sleep. Conversely, any unusual sounds from the sleeping chambers would be clearly audible to the attending priests, allowing them to monitor the dream activity of their charges.
Water played a crucial role in the complex's design, with channels carved throughout the structure to carry fresh water from the Nile to various purification basins and ritual pools. The sound of gently flowing water was audible throughout most of the complex, creating a peaceful ambience that masked any disruptive noises from the bustling city beyond the temple walls.
The complex also included workshops where the various materials needed for dream interpretation were prepared. Skilled craftsmen worked to create the special incense blends used in different types of dream sessions, while scribes prepared fresh papyrus sheets for recording new dreams and interpretations. Textile workers produced the fine linen garments worn by both interpreters and those seeking their services. Gardens within the complex provided many of the herbs and flowers used in dream interpretation rituals.
These carefully tended plots grew chamomile for calming dreams, lotus flowers for spiritual visions, and various aromatic herbs that were dried and ground into incense powders. The gardens were arranged according to the principles of sacred geometry, with pathways that formed symbolic patterns representing the journey of the soul through the dream world.
Storage facilities within the complex housed a vast collection of oils, resins, precious stones, and other materials used in dream interpretation work. These storerooms were kept cool and dry through ingenious ventilation systems that drew air through underground chambers. Temperature and humidity were carefully controlled to preserve the potency of delicate aromatic substances.
The complex included living quarters for the full-time dream interpreters and their assistants, as well as guest accommodations for visitors who had traveled long distances to seek interpretation services.
These residential areas were designed with the same attention to spiritual principles as the rest of the complex, oriented to catch cooling breezes while maintaining privacy and quiet for study and meditation. As the centuries passed and the reputation of the Memphis dream interpreters spread throughout the ancient world, additional buildings were added to accommodate increasing numbers of visitors.
A large reception hall was constructed where preliminary interviews could be conducted, and a separate building was erected to house the expanding library of dream records and interpretations. The entire complex was surrounded by a high wall decorated with protective symbols and prayers, creating a sacred enclosure that separated the holy work of dream interpretation from the mundane activities of daily life in Memphis. Guards stationed at various points around the perimeter ensured that the peaceful atmosphere within the complex was never disturbed by unwanted intrusions. The architectural achievement represented by the Memphis Dream Interpretation Complex demonstrated the profound importance that ancient Egyptian civilization placed on the world of dreams and the skilled practitioners who could unlock their meanings, creating a physical space that seemed to exist at the intersection of earthly reality and divine mystery. Within the extensive library of the Memphis Dream Interpretation Complex lay the accumulated wisdom of over 1,000 years of systematic dream study.
The sacred texts and dream dictionaries housed in these halls represented one of humanity's earliest attempts to create a comprehensive, scholarly approach to understanding the language of dreams. These documents, written on papyrus scrolls with reed pens and carefully preserved through centuries of Egyptian history, form the intellectual foundation upon which all dream interpretation at Memphis was based.
The most revered of all texts was the Great Dream Book of Thoth, a massive compilation that legend attributed to Thoth himself, the god of wisdom and divine communication. This text, written on over 40 individual papyrus sheets and bound together with linen cords, contained more than 3,000 dream symbols and their meanings, organized according to a complex system of cross-references and associations that allowed interpreters to understand how different symbols might interact within a single dream narrative. The Great Dream Book was not the work of a single author, but rather the culmination of generations of careful observation and scholarly analysis. Each entry in the book followed a standard format. First, a description of the dream symbol or scenario.
Second, its basic meaning or meanings. Third, variations in interpretation based on the dreamer's circumstances. Fourth, seasonal or astronomical considerations that might modify the interpretation. And finally, related symbols that might appear in conjunction with the primary symbol.
For example, the entry for dreams involving water began with the hieroglyphic symbol for water, followed by a detailed description of its various manifestations in dreams. Clear, flowing water generally indicated purification, renewal, or spiritual cleansing, while muddy or stagnant water suggested spiritual contamination or blocked emotional energy. The interpretation would then be modified based on the dreamer's current life situation. For a pregnant woman, water often represented the impending birth. For a farmer, it might indicate the success or failure of crops. For a priest, it could signify the need for additional purification rituals. The dream dictionaries also contained extensive sections devoted to what the Memphis interpreters called dream grammar, the rules that governed how different symbols combined to create meaning within a dream narrative. Just as spoken language had grammatical structures that determined meaning, the interpreters believed that dreams followed their own internal logic and organizational principles. One of the most important concepts in Egyptian dream grammar was the principle of symbolic inversion, which held that many dream symbols represented the opposite of their apparent meaning. Dreams of death, for instance, often indicated new beginnings or spiritual rebirth, while dreams of great wealth might warn of impending financial difficulties.
This principle of inversion was believed to reflect the topsy-turvy nature of the dream world, where normal earthly rules did not apply.
The Memphis scribes had also developed sophisticated systems for categorizing dreams, according to their source and purpose.
Divine dreams came directly from the gods, and usually contained clear prophetic or instructional content.
Ancestral dreams involved communication with deceased family members or important historical figures.
Healing dreams provided diagnostic information about illness or suggested treatments.
Warning dreams alerted the dreamer to potential dangers or problems.
Finally, processing dreams simply helped the mind sort through daily experiences and emotions.
Each category of dream required different interpretive approaches, and the sacred texts provided detailed guidelines for distinguishing between them.
Divine dreams typically featured bright lights, celestial imagery, or the direct appearance of gods in recognizable forms.
Ancestral dreams often took place in familiar locations from the dreamer's past and involved conversations with deceased relatives.
Healing dreams frequently included symbolic representations of internal body processes or specific treatments and remedies.
The library also contained specialized texts dealing with dreams experienced by people in different professions and social roles.
The Pharaoh's Dream Manual provided interpretations specifically tailored to rulers and their concerns about governing, warfare, and divine approval of their reign. The farmer's dream guide focused on agricultural symbolism and seasonal predictions. The merchant's dream compendium dealt with dreams related to trade, travel, and commercial success.
Women's dreams were considered particularly important in Memphis tradition, as women were believed to be naturally more receptive to divine communication through dreams.
A special text called the Book of Women's Visions contained interpretations for dreams that were thought to occur primarily or exclusively among women. These included dreams about childbirth, family relationships, domestic harmony, and the various goddesses who protected women and children. The sacred text also included detailed instructions for what the interpreters called dream cultivation techniques for encouraging specific types of dreams. These methods involved elaborate preparation rituals, dietary restrictions, sleeping positions, and meditation practices designed to make the dreamer more receptive to particular kinds of divine communication. A person seeking guidance about an important decision, for example, might follow a prescribed regimen of fasting, prayer, and ritual purification designed to attract a guidance dream. One fascinating section of the dream library dealt with collective or shared dreams instances, where multiple people experienced similar or connected dreams on the same night.
The Memphis interpreters had documented hundreds of cases where family members, friends, or even entire communities had reported remarkably similar dream content during significant events such as floods, military conflicts, or religious festivals.
These collective dreams were considered especially significant, as they suggested direct divine intervention in human affairs. The scribes responsible for maintaining the dream texts worked under strict protocols designed to ensure accuracy and prevent contamination of the sacred knowledge.
Each scroll was copied by hand multiple times, with different scribes working independently to create duplicate versions.
These copies were then carefully compared to identify and correct any transcription errors.
The original texts were handled only by senior scribes who had undergone special purification rituals.
New dream reports and interpretations were added to the collection following a rigorous verification process. When a dreamer reported a vision that seemed to contain prophetic content, the interpretation would be recorded along with specific predictions about future events. Follow-up scribes would then monitor these predictions over months or years, documenting their accuracy or inaccuracy.
Only interpretations that demonstrated consistent reliability would be incorporated into the main texts. The Memphis dream interpreters also maintained extensive biographical files on frequent dreamers, documenting patterns in their dream content over time.
These case histories revealed fascinating insights into how individual psychology, life circumstances, and spiritual development influence dream symbolism.
Some people consistently experienced dreams filled with water imagery, while others frequently encountered animal symbols or architectural structures in their nocturnal visions. Cross-referencing systems within the dream library allowed interpreters to quickly access related information during consultation sessions.
If a dreamer reported seeing a particular animal, for example, the interpreter could instantly locate not only the standard meaning of that animal symbol, but also its historical associations, seasonal variations in meaning, and records of how it had appeared in other documented dreams.
The library also housed texts dealing with the interpretation of nightmares and disturbing dreams. These specialized manuals provided both analytical frameworks for understanding frightening dream content and practical rituals for protecting dreamers from malevolent spiritual influences. The Memphis priests understood that not all dreams came from benevolent sources, and they had developed sophisticated methods for distinguishing between helpful and harmful spiritual communications.
Astronomical texts formed another crucial component of the dream library, as the interpreters believed that celestial events strongly influenced dream content. Detailed star charts and planetary position tables allowed interpreters to correlate dream reports with specific astronomical conditions, often revealing patterns that enhanced the accuracy of their interpretations.
Dreams experienced during lunar eclipses, for instance, were thought to carry especially powerful prophetic content. The preservation of these ancient texts required constant vigilance against the threats of moisture, insects, fire, and simple deterioration over time. The library chambers were equipped with sophisticated ventilation systems that maintained optimal temperature and humidity levels.
Special oils and resins were used to treat the papyrus to resist insect damage, and the scrolls were stored in sealed wooden containers lined with aromatic woods that naturally repelled pests. Training texts for apprentice interpreters comprised another significant portion of the library. These educational materials included practice exercises, case studies, and step-by-step guides for conducting interpretation sessions.
Beginning students would spend years working through these texts, gradually developing the knowledge and skills necessary to serve as full interpreters. The Memphis dream text also included theoretical treatises exploring the philosophical and theological implications of dream interpretation.
These scholarly works addressed fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, the relationship between sleeping and waking states, the mechanics of divine communication, and the role of dreams in human spiritual development. As we continue our journey through the world of Memphis dream interpretation, these sacred texts and dictionaries remind us of the extraordinary intellectual achievement represented by this ancient center of learning,
where the ephemeral experience of dreaming was transformed through careful study into a systematic body of knowledge that served the spiritual needs of an entire civilization. The dream interpreters of Memphis followed a daily routine that had been refined over centuries, each element carefully designed to maintain their spiritual sensitivity and scholarly precision.
Their day began approximately 2 hours before dawn, when the night air was coolest and the boundary between the dream world and waking consciousness seemed most permeable.
The first activity of each day was the ritual of purification known as greeting the dawn waters. Each interpreter would make his way to the sacred pool in the court of preparation, where natural spring water bubbled up from deep underground sources. The water in this pool was believed to retain the memory of primordial creation, making it ideal for spiritual cleansing. The purification ritual involved 7 complete immersions in the sacred water, each one accompanied by a specific prayer or incantation.
The first immersion was dedicated to Thoth, asking for wisdom and clarity in interpretation.
The second honored Isis, seeking intuitive understanding of symbolic meanings. The third recognized PTH, requesting skill in the craft of dream analysis.
The remaining immersions were dedicated to the 4 sons of Horus, who were believed to protect the organs of perception and understanding.
After emerging from the pool, each interpreter would dry himself with clean linen towels that had been blessed during the full moon ceremony. The towels were changed daily, and the used ones were washed in the Nile with special soaps made from natun and aromatic herbs, then dried in sunlight while priests chanted protective spells over them.
The morning dress ritual was equally precise.
First came the undergarments, simple linen loincloths that had been woven from thread spun by temple women during meditation. Over this went a long tunic of the finest white linen, so finely woven that it was almost transparent. The tunic was pleated according to sacred geometric proportions, with exactly 18 pleats representing the 18 districts of Egypt.
Around the neck, each interpreter wore a collar of gold and lapis lazuli beads arranged in patterns representing the constellation of Orion, which the Egyptians associated with Osiris and the journey of the soul through the underworld.
On their feet were simple reed sandals that had been soaked in sacred oils and allowed to dry in the temple incense chambers, giving them a subtle fragrance that was believed to attract benevolent spirits.
Following the dressing ritual, the interpreters would gather in the Hall of Records for the morning study session. This communal period of learning and discussion lasted approximately 1 hour and served multiple purposes, reviewing difficult cases. Following the dressing ritual,
the interpreters would gather in the Hall of Records for the morning study session.
This communal period of learning and discussion lasted approximately 1 hour and served multiple purposes: reviewing difficult cases from the previous day, studying new additions to the dream texts, and sharing insights gained through their individual meditation and prayer practices. During these morning sessions, senior interpreters would often present complex dreams that had challenged their interpretive skills, inviting discussion and debate from their colleagues.
These scholarly exchanges were conducted in hushed tones, with each participant speaking only when holding a small carved ibis, the symbol of Thoth.
This ritual ensured that conversations remained orderly and respectful, befitting the sacred nature of their work.
The interpreters would also use this time to review the astronomical observations recorded by the temple star watchers during the night. The position of planets, the phase of the moon, and the visibility of particular constellations all influenced how dreams should be interpreted.
A dream of flying, for instance, might be interpreted differently depending on whether Mars was visible in the sky or whether the moon was waxing or waning.
After the morning study session, each interpreter would spend time in personal meditation and prayer. This solitary practice took place in small private chambers adjacent to the Hall of Records, each one equipped with a simple reed mat, a small oil lamp, and a wooden statue of Thoth. The meditation period lasted exactly 1 hour, timed by the burning of specially prepared incense sticks that had been marked to indicate the passage of time. The meditation practice followed a prescribed sequence that had been developed over centuries of experience. The interpreter would begin by sitting in the lotus position facing east, toward the rising sun and the direction of renewal.
The first 15 minutes were devoted to breathing exercises designed to calm the mind and center the consciousness.
The interpreter would inhale to a count of 4, hold the breath for a count of 4, then exhale to a count of 4, continuing this pattern until the mind achieved a state of perfect stillness. The second phase of meditation involved visualization exercises, where the interpreter would mentally review the various dream symbols and their meanings, allowing the images to flow through consciousness like scenes from a dream itself. This practice was believed to strengthen the interpreter's intuitive connection to the symbolic language of dreams and to prepare the mind for the day's consultation sessions. The final phase of meditation was devoted to prayer and communion with Thoth, asking for guidance, wisdom, and protection during the day's work. The interpreter would recite ancient prayers in the sacred language, words that had been passed down through generations of dream interpreters, and were believed to have special power to open channels of divine communication. Following meditation came the preparation of materials for the day's consultations. Each interpreter was responsible for preparing his own supplies, grinding fresh ink from charcoal and gum arabic, cutting reed pens to the proper shape and sharpness, and selecting the papyrus sheets that would be used for recording dreams and interpretations.
This seemingly mundane work was performed with the same reverence as the more obviously spiritual activities, as the interpreters understood that every aspect of their craft was sacred. The ink preparation ritual was particularly elaborate. The charcoal used for black ink had to come from wood that had been burned during a religious ceremony, while the red ink was made from ochre that had been blessed by the priests of Ai.
The gum arabic was dissolved in water that had been exposed to moonlight for 7 consecutive nights, and the entire mixture was stirred with a wooden stick carved from sycamore wood, the tree sacred to Hathor.
Reed pens were cut from plants that grew in the temple gardens, harvested only during the new moon when the plant's spiritual energy was believed to be at its peak.
Each pen was cut according to precise specifications, with the tip shaped to create specific line widths appropriate for different types of hieroglyphic writing.
The pens were then blessed with sacred oils and stored in wooden cases carved with protective symbols.
The selection of papyrus sheets for each day's work required careful consideration of the quality and spiritual properties of the writing material. The finest papyrus, made from plants grown in sacred pools within the temple complex, was reserved for recording the most important dreams and interpretations. Lesser quality papyrus was used for practice exercises and preliminary notes that would later be copied onto more permanent materials. Around midday, when the sun reached its zenith and the temple complex was filled with golden light, the interpreters would gather for the communal meal. This was not merely a time for physical nourishment, but another opportunity for learning and spiritual development. The meal was eaten in silence for the first half hour, allowing each interpreter to contemplate the morning's activities and prepare mentally for the afternoon's consultations. The food served during these meals was carefully chosen for its spiritual as well as nutritional properties. Bread made from emmer wheat was believed to enhance mental clarity, while fish from the sacred pools provided the spiritual nourishment needed for divine communication. Fresh vegetables grown in the temple gardens were thought to maintain the body's harmony with natural cycles, while dates and figs supplied the sweetness that attracted benevolent spirits. After the silent portion of the meal, the interpreters would engage in quiet conversation about their work, sharing insights and discussing challenging cases. These informal discussions often provided solutions to interpretive problems that had seemed insurmountable during formal study sessions. The relaxed atmosphere of the communal meal encouraged creative thinking and collaborative problem solving. The afternoon hours were devoted to consultation sessions with those seeking dream interpretation services. These sessions required intense concentration and spiritual sensitivity, as the interpreter had to listen carefully not only to the words being spoken, but also to the subtle energetic vibrations that surrounded each dreamer. The physical and mental demands of this work were considerable, requiring the interpreter to maintain perfect focus for hours at a time. Between consultation sessions, the interpreters would perform brief purification rituals to cleanse themselves of any negative spiritual influences they might have encountered. These rituals involved washing the hands and face with blessed water, burning small amounts of purifying incense, and reciting protective prayers. This regular spiritual cleansing was essential to prevent the accumulation of harmful energies that could interfere with the interpreter's sensitivity and accuracy. As evening approached and the shadows grew longer across the temple courtyards, the interpreters would begin their final activities of the day. The consultation chambers would be cleaned and prepared for the next day's sessions, with fresh incense burned to purify the air and protective symbols redrawn on the floors with blessed chalk. The day concluded with the evening study session, where the interpreters would record their observations and insights from the day's work. These notes were carefully organized and filed according to a complex system that allowed for easy retrieval and cross-referencing. The most significant cases were copied into the permanent record books that formed the growing library of dream interpretation knowledge. Before retiring to their personal quarters, each interpreter would spend a final hour in prayer and meditation, reflecting on the day's experiences and preparing spiritually for their own dreams during the night ahead. For the dream interpreters of Memphis understood that their own nocturnal visions were as important as those of their clients, often providing insights and guidance that would prove valuable in future interpretations. The consultation chamber in the Memphis Dream Complex was designed to facilitate the most intimate and sacred of conversations, the sharing and interpretation of dreams. As morning light filtered through the carefully positioned windows, casting gentle patterns across the painted walls, the dream interpreters would prepare themselves for the delicate art of helping others understand the divine messages that had come to them during sleep. Each consultation began long before the dreamer entered the chamber. The interpreter would spend several minutes in silent meditation, preparing his consciousness to receive and process the symbolic information that would soon be shared with him. This preparatory period was essential, as the interpreter needed to achieve a state of mental clarity
and spiritual openness that would allow him to perceive the deeper meanings hidden within dream narratives.
The physical arrangement of the consultation chamber reflected the sacred nature of the work conducted there. The dreamer would sit on a low cushioned divan facing east, toward the direction of renewal and divine illumination. The interpreter sat across from the dreamer, slightly to the south, positioning himself to catch the gentle morning light that would allow him to observe subtle changes in the dreamer's expression and body language as the dream was recounted. Between them stood a low table made of polished limestone, its surface inscribed with protective symbols and prayers for clear communication.
On this table were arranged the tools of interpretation: papyrus sheets for recording the dream and its analysis, reed pens and ink for writing, small wooden figurines representing various gods and goddesses, and a collection of smooth stones used for divination, when the symbolic meaning of a dream remained unclear.
The consultation process followed a carefully structured sequence that had been refined over centuries of practice. The interpreter would begin by asking the dreamer to state their name, place of birth, and current occupation, information that would help contextualize the dream symbolism. A farmer's dream of grain, for instance, would likely carry different significance than the same imagery in the dream of a priest or merchant.
Next came questions about the dreamer's current life circumstances, recent significant events, ongoing concerns or problems, relationships with family members, and state of health.
This background information was crucial because the Memphis interpreters understood that dreams often reflected and responded to the dreamer's waking life experiences, sometimes offering guidance or warnings related to current situations. The interpreter would then inquire about the timing of the dream, the specific night it occurred, the phase of the moon, any unusual astronomical events that might have been visible, and the dreamer's activities during the day preceding the dream.
All of these factors could influence the dream's meaning and the appropriate interpretation approach.
When the preliminary information had been gathered, the dreamer would be invited to recount the dream in complete detail, speaking slowly and pausing frequently to allow the interpreter to ask clarifying questions. The interpreter would encourage the dreamer to describe not only the visual elements of the dream, but also sounds, smells, textures, emotions, and any other sensory experiences that had occurred during the dream state. The art of listening was perhaps the most crucial skill possessed by Memphis dream interpreters. They were trained to hear not only the explicit content of dream narratives, but also the subtle variations in tone, pace, and emphasis that might reveal hidden meanings or emotional significance. A dreamer's hesitation when describing a particular dream element often indicated an area that deserved special attention during interpretation. As the dream was recounted, the interpreter would make detailed notes using a sophisticated system of hieroglyphic shorthand that allowed him to capture both the literal content and his initial impressions about symbolic meanings.
These notes would later be expanded into full interpretations, but during the consultation itself, the interpreter needed to maintain continuous eye contact and emotional connection with the dreamer.
The Memphis interpreters had developed a complex taxonomy for categorizing dream content that helped them organize their analytical approach. Dreams were first classified by their apparent source: divine communications from gods, messages from deceased ancestors, reflections of daily concerns, or expressions of internal psychological states. Each category required different interpretive methods and carried different levels of prophetic significance. Within each major category, dreams were further subdivided based on their dominant themes: journeys, transformations, encounters with animals or mythological beings, natural phenomena, architectural structures, or social interactions. The interpreters maintained extensive mental catalogues of how these various themes typically manifested in dreams, and what they usually signified in different contexts. The interpretation process itself was both analytical and intuitive, requiring the interpreter to balance his extensive knowledge of dream symbolism with sensitivity to the unique circumstances and personality of each dreamer.
Standard symbolic meanings provided a foundation for analysis, but the skilled interpreter understood that symbols could carry personal significance that differed from their traditional interpretations.
One of the most sophisticated aspects of Memphis dream interpretation was the attention paid to dream structure and narrative flow. The interpreters understood that the sequence of events within a dream could be as meaningful as the individual symbols themselves. A dream that began with darkness and progressed toward light carried different significance than one that followed the opposite pattern, even if both dreams contained similar symbolic elements. The emotional tone of dreams was also carefully considered during interpretation. Dreams experienced with feelings of joy, peace, or excitement were generally interpreted more positively than those accompanied by fear, sadness, or anxiety, though the Memphis interpreters recognized that disturbing dreams sometimes contained important warnings or guidance that could ultimately benefit the dreamer. When interpreting dreams that contained warnings or prophecies of potential difficulties, the Memphis interpreters were trained to present their analyses with sensitivity and hope.
They would explain the symbolic meaning of threatening dream elements while also providing guidance about protective rituals or behavioral changes that might help the dreamer avoid or minimize predicted problems.
The consultation process also included discussion of any recurring elements in the dreamer's nocturnal visions. The interpreters maintained detailed records of each client's dream history, allowing them to identify patterns and themes that appeared repeatedly over time.
These recurring elements were considered especially significant, as they suggested ongoing spiritual communications or persistent issues that required attention. During particularly complex consultations, the interpreter might employ additional analytical tools to clarify unclear symbolic meanings. Small wooden figurines representing various Egyptian deities could be arranged and rearranged to explore different possible interpretations of divine encounters within dreams. Smooth stones carved with hieroglyphic symbols might be cast like dice to provide additional insight into ambiguous dream elements.
The Memphis interpreters were also skilled in recognizing when dreams contained multiple layers of meaning that required careful separation and analysis.
A single dream might simultaneously offer guidance about a practical daily concern, warning about a potential health issue, and communication from a deceased family member.
The interpreter's task was to identify and explain each layer of meaning while helping the dreamer understand how the different messages related to their overall life situation. The consultation process typically lasted between 1 and 3 hours, depending on the complexity of the dream and the depth of analysis required. The interpreter would never rush through a session, as hurried analysis could result in misunderstanding of crucial symbolic communications. The Memphis dream complex operated on the principle that every dream deserved careful consideration, regardless of how simple or straightforward it might initially appear.
Near the end of each consultation, the interpreter would summarize his analysis, explaining the various symbolic meanings he had identified and their likely significance for the dreamer's life. This summary would be accompanied by specific recommendations for actions the dreamer might take in response to the dream's guidance, whether these involved ritual practices, behavioral changes, or practical decisions about daily affairs.
The interpreter would also provide guidance about follow-up procedures if the dream appeared to contain prophetic elements that would unfold over time. Instructions might be given about signs to watch for, additional dreams that might provide clarification, or return visits to the temple if circumstances developed in unexpected ways.
Every consultation concluded with a blessing ceremony in which the interpreter would offer prayers for the dreamer's continued spiritual protection and guidance.
Blessed oils might be applied to the dreamer's forehead, protective amulets given for wearing during vulnerable periods, or special incense provided for burning at home to maintain connection with beneficial spiritual influences. The written record of each consultation was carefully preserved in the temple archives, contributing to the vast database of dream experiences and interpretations that formed the foundation of Memphis dream scholarship.
These records were regularly reviewed by senior interpreters looking for patterns and insights that might improve their understanding of dream symbolism and meaning.
The Memphis consultation process represented one of history's most sophisticated approaches to dream analysis, combining rigorous scholarly methods with profound spiritual sensitivity. The interpreters understood that they served as mediators between the human and divine worlds, helping their fellow citizens understand and respond appropriately to the sacred communications that came to them during sleep.
Through their skilled and compassionate work, the dream interpreters of Memphis provided not only intellectual understanding, but also emotional comfort and spiritual guidance to thousands of people seeking to comprehend the mysterious messages that visited them in the realm of dreams.
The selection and training of future dream interpreters began in the Memphis temple complex when boys reached their 8th year, an age when the Egyptians believed the mind had developed sufficient clarity to distinguish between ordinary dreams and divine communications. The process of identifying potential candidates was both systematic and mystical, involving careful observation of the child's natural abilities as well as consultation with the gods through divination rituals.
Parents who wished their sons to be considered for interpreter training would bring them to the temple during the festival of Thoth, which occurred annually during the season of inundation. These young candidates would spend 3 days within the temple complex, during which time the senior priests would observe their behavior, test their memory and linguistic abilities, and most importantly, record and analyze their dreams.
The dream evaluation process was particularly crucial, as the interpreters believed that future success in their profession could be predicted by examining the quality and content of a child's natural dream experiences.
Children who remembered their dreams in vivid detail, who reported encounters with divine beings, or whose dreams contained clear symbolic imagery were considered promising candidates for training.
The selection ritual culminated on the 3rd night with what was called the test of Thoth's blessing. Each candidate would sleep alone in a small chamber adjacent to the main temple, surrounded by statues of Thoth and other deities associated with wisdom and divine communication. The dreams experienced during this sacred night were considered the most reliable indicator of the child's potential as a future interpreter. Boys who passed the initial selection process would begin their training immediately, moving into the temple complex to live alongside the established interpreters and their existing students. The training program was designed to last 12 years, taking the students from childhood through young adulthood and preparing them not only in the technical aspects of dream interpretation, but also in the broader spiritual and intellectual disciplines required for their sacred profession. The first year of training focused primarily on literacy and basic religious instruction. The young students would spend their mornings learning to read and write hieroglyphic script, starting with simple signs and gradually progressing to more complex texts.
They would practice their writing on broken pottery shards and pieces of limestone, materials that were readily available and inexpensive, saving precious papyrus for more advanced students. Religious instruction during this initial year included memorization of basic prayers and hymns, learning the names and attributes of major Egyptian deities, and understanding the fundamental concepts of Egyptian theology.
The students would participate in daily temple rituals, though only as observers, gradually absorbing the rhythms and practices of sacred life.
Physical conditioning was also an important component of early training, as the interpreters understood that maintaining bodily health was essential for spiritual sensitivity.
The young students would participate in swimming exercises in the sacred pool, walking meditations through the temple gardens, and breathing exercises designed to enhance mental clarity and emotional stability. The second and third years of training introduced the students to the basic principles of dream analysis. They would begin by studying simple dream scenarios and their standard interpretations, learning to recognize common symbols and understand their traditional meanings. Much of this learning took place through oral instruction, with senior students and junior priests sharing their knowledge through storytelling and discussion.
During these early years, the students would also begin maintaining dream journals, recording their own nocturnal experiences, and attempting basic self-interpretation under the guidance of their instructors.
This practice served multiple purposes. It helped the students develop skills in dream recall and description, provided material for educational analysis, and allowed the instructors to monitor each student's spiritual and psychological development. The fourth through sixth years of training marked a significant intensification of the educational program. Students would begin studying the major dream texts, starting with simpler compilations and gradually progressing to more complex and comprehensive works.
They would spend long hours in the library, copying important passages and creating their own reference materials.
Language study became more sophisticated during this phase, with students learning to read older forms of hieroglyphic writing and beginning instruction in foreign languages such as Nubian and various Semitic dialects. This linguistic training was essential because the Memphis temple served people from many different cultural backgrounds, and interpreters needed to understand the cultural context that might influence dream symbolism. Mathematical and astronomical instruction also began during these middle years of training.
Students would learn to calculate lunar phases, track the movements of planets and stars, and understand the Egyptian calendar system.
This knowledge was crucial for interpreters who needed to consider celestial influences when analyzing dreams.
The seventh through ninth years of training involved more advanced study of dream interpretation theory and methodology. Students would analyze increasingly complex dream scenarios, learning to identify multiple layers of meaning within single dreams, and to understand how different symbolic elements might interact to create composite meanings. During this phase, students would also begin practicing interpretation under careful supervision. They would attend consultation sessions with senior interpreters, initially just observing and taking notes, but gradually being allowed to offer their own analytical insights and interpretations. These supervised practice sessions were crucial for developing the interpersonal skills needed to work effectively with dreamers from all walks of life.
The study of human psychology and behavior became more prominent during these advanced years.
Students would learn to recognize signs of mental disturbance, emotional distress, and physical illness that might influence dream content or require referral to other specialists within the temple complex.
They would also study the ways that age, gender, social status, and cultural background could affect dream symbolism and interpretation. Medical training was another important component of advanced interpreter education.
Students would learn basic anatomy and physiology, study the effects of various illnesses on mental states and dream content, and understand the relationship between physical health and spiritual well-being.
This medical knowledge was essential because many people sought dream interpretation specifically for healing purposes.
The final 3 years of training focused on specialization and independent practice. Students would choose areas of particular interest or expertise, such as prophetic dreams, healing dreams, or dreams related to specific professions or social roles.
They would undertake intensive study in their chosen specializations, often working closely with master interpreters who had developed particular expertise in these areas.
During this final phase, students would also begin conducting independent consultations, though still under the general supervision of senior priests. They would be assigned their own consultation chambers and would begin building relationships with regular clients who sought their services.
This period of supervised independence was crucial for developing confidence and establishing the reputation that would be essential for their future careers.
The examination process that concluded interpreter training was both rigorous and comprehensive. Students would be tested on their knowledge of dream symbolism, their ability to analyze complex dream scenarios, their understanding of religious and astronomical influences on dreams, and their skills in conducting consultation sessions with actual dreamers. The final examination included both written and practical components. Students would be required to write detailed analyses of challenging dream scenarios, demonstrate their knowledge of dream texts and reference materials, and conduct actual interpretation sessions while being observed and evaluated by panels of senior interpreters.
The practical examination was particularly demanding, as students would be presented with a series of real dreamers seeking interpretation services.
The examining interpreters would observe not only the accuracy of the students' analysis, but also their sensitivity to the dreamer's emotional needs, their ability to communicate complex symbolic meanings in understandable terms, and their skill in providing practical guidance based on dream content. Students who successfully completed their training would be formally initiated into the Brotherhood of Memphis Dream Interpreters during a ceremony that took place during the Festival of Thoth.
This initiation ritual involved purification ceremonies, oath-taking, and the presentation of the tools and symbols of their profession. The new interpreters would receive their official seal, allowing them to authenticate their interpretations, and their first set of professional robes and equipment. The training program at Memphis was renowned throughout the ancient world for its thoroughness and effectiveness. Graduates of the program often established interpreter practices in other cities throughout Egypt and the broader Mediterranean region, spreading the sophisticated methodologies they had learned in Memphis to communities far from the original temple complex. The bond between interpreter students and their instructors often lasted throughout their careers, with former students maintaining correspondence with their teachers and returning periodically to Memphis for advanced training and consultation on difficult cases. This network of relationships helped maintain the high standards of Memphis dream interpretation and ensured that new developments and insights were shared throughout the community of practicing interpreters. The training program also included instruction in the business aspects of dream interpretation, as most graduates would eventually establish independent practices and need to understand how to attract clients, set appropriate fees, and maintain the ethical standards expected of their profession.
Students learned about the different types of consultation services they could offer and the appropriate protocols for different categories of clients. Throughout their training, students were encouraged to develop their own areas of special interest and expertise while maintaining proficiency in all aspects of dream interpretation.
Some students showed particular aptitude for analyzing prophetic dreams, while others excelled at healing-related interpretations or dreams, involving complex theological symbolism. This specialization allowed the Memphis Temple to offer comprehensive services while maintaining the highest standards of expertise in all areas of dream analysis. Within the vast library of the Memphis Dream Interpretation Complex, thousands of symbolic meanings had been carefully catalogued and preserved over centuries of observation and analysis. The dream interpreters understood that the divine realm communicated through a sophisticated symbolic language that required extensive study and deep spiritual insight to comprehend fully. Each symbol carried multiple layers of meaning that could shift and transform depending on the context in which it appeared and the circumstances of the dreamer who experienced it. The symbol of water held perhaps the most complex and varied meanings in the Memphis system of dream interpretation.
In its purest form, clear-flowing water represented spiritual cleansing, renewal, and the life-giving power of the Nile itself.
Dreams of drinking clean water were interpreted as signs of spiritual nourishment and divine blessing, while dreams of bathing in clear water suggested the need for or completion of a purification process. However, the meaning of water could change dramatically based on its appearance and behavior within the dream. Muddy or stagnant water indicated spiritual contamination, or blocked emotional energy that required attention and healing.
Turbulent or flooding water might represent overwhelming emotions or circumstances that threaten to disrupt the dreamer's life balance.
Water that appeared in unusual places, such as inside buildings or flowing upward, was often interpreted as a sign of divine intervention or miraculous events to come. The Memphis interpreters recognized that the cultural significance of the Nile River influenced how water appeared in Egyptian dreams. The annual flood that brought life to the land was so central to Egyptian civilization that dreams of rising water during the appropriate season were generally interpreted positively, suggesting abundance and fertility. However, dreams of flooding during the wrong season might warn of disruption to natural order or unexpected challenges ahead. Animals featured prominently in Egyptian dream symbolism, with each species carrying specific meanings that had been refined through generations of interpretation. The cat, sacred to the goddess Bastet, represented protection, feminine wisdom, and domestic harmony. Dreams of cats were often interpreted as messages about family relationships or household matters, with the cat's behavior in the dream providing additional clues about the specific meaning. Dreams of dogs typically related to loyalty, friendship, and fidelity, but could also indicate the need for protection or vigilance.
A friendly dog might represent a trustworthy companion or advisor, while an aggressive dog could warn of betrayal or hidden enemies.
The color and size of the dog in the dream provided additional interpretive information, with black dogs sometimes representing underworld connections and white dogs suggesting divine protection.
Birds in dreams were generally interpreted as messengers from the spiritual realm, with different species carrying specific types of communication.
The ibis,
sacred to Thoth, represented wisdom and divine knowledge appearing in dreams when the dreamer needed guidance in intellectual or spiritual matters.
Hawks and falcons, associated with Horus, indicated royal favor or divine protection, while owls might suggest hidden knowledge or the need to pay attention to subtle signs and omens. The symbolism of snakes in Egyptian dreams was particularly complex, as these creatures were associated with both protective and destructive forces. The cobra, worn on the pharaoh's crown as a symbol of divine authority, might represent royal power or spiritual awakening when it appeared in dreams. However, snakes could also symbolize hidden dangers, transformation through shedding of old ways, or the need for healing and regeneration.
Architectural symbols formed another major category in the Memphis Dream Dictionary.
Dreams of temples generally indicated spiritual growth, divine blessing, or the need for religious devotion. The specific temple appearing in the dream could provide additional interpretive clues, with temples dedicated to particular deities carrying the symbolic associations of those gods and goddesses.
Houses in dreams typically represented the dreamers in a psychological state or domestic situation. A well-maintained house with bright rooms suggested emotional stability and family harmony, while a dark, damaged, or unfamiliar house might indicate internal conflict or domestic problems requiring attention.
Rooms within dream houses carried their own symbolic meanings, with bedrooms relating to intimate relationships and private thoughts, kitchens representing nourishment and family care, and storage areas suggesting hidden resources or forgotten memories. Bridges and doorways in dreams were interpreted as symbols of transition and transformation. Crossing a bridge suggested movement from one life phase to another, while the condition of the bridge indicated whether this transition would be smooth or challenging. Doorways represented opportunities and choices, with open doors suggesting available options and closed or locked doors indicating obstacles or restrictions that needed to be addressed. The Memphis interpreters paid careful attention to numerical symbolism within dreams, as Egyptian culture attributed sacred significance to specific numbers. The number 3, representing completeness and divine perfection, often appeared in dreams as a sign of spiritual fulfillment or the successful completion of important undertakings. 7. The number of completeness and cosmic order might indicate the need for patience as natural cycles unfolded according to divine timing. Dreams involving the number 12, corresponding to the months of the year and the hours of day and night, often related to time cycles and seasonal changes. The appearance of this number might suggest that the dreamer needed to consider longer-term patterns or wait for the appropriate timing before taking important actions. Color symbolism added another layer of meaning to dream interpretation. White, the color of purity and divine light, generally indicated spiritual blessing and protection. Dreams dominated by white imagery suggested that the dreamer was in harmony with divine will or that spiritual purification had been achieved. Black, while sometimes associated with negative forces, could also represent the fertile soil of Egypt or the protective darkness of the womb, suggesting hidden creative potential. Red in dreams often related to life force, passion, and vital energy, but could also warn of anger, conflict, or dangerous situations requiring caution. Gold represented divine favor, eternal values, and spiritual treasures, while silver might indicate lunar influences, feminine wisdom, or the need for intuitive rather than rational approaches to current challenges.
Green, the color of growing plants and renewal, typically indicated fertility, growth, and new beginnings.
Dreams dominated by green imagery often appeared during times of personal growth or when new opportunities were emerging in the dreamer's life.
Blue, associated with the sky and celestial realm, suggested divine communication, spiritual aspiration, or the need to consider higher perspectives on earthly problems.
The Memphis interpreters also recognized the importance of bodily symbolism in dreams. Dreams of the eyes often related to spiritual vision, understanding, or the need to see situations more clearly. Blind eyes might indicate spiritual darkness or unwillingness to acknowledge obvious truths, while especially bright or luminous eyes suggested divine insight or prophetic abilities. Dreams involving the hands typically related to personal agency, creative power, or the ability to accomplish desired goals.
Strong, capable hands suggested confidence and effectiveness in dealing with life challenges, while injured or disabled hands might indicate feelings of powerlessness or obstacles to achieving important objectives.
The heart, considered the seat of intelligence and emotion in Egyptian thought, carried profound symbolic significance in dreams.
A healthy, strong heart represented wisdom, emotional balance, and spiritual vitality, while a damaged or missing heart might indicate the need for healing, emotional restoration, or spiritual renewal.
Dreams of the mouth and voice often related to communication, truth-telling, or the power of words to create or destroy. A sealed mouth might indicate the need for silence or discretion, while a voice that could not be heard might suggest that the dreamer felt unheard or ignored in waking life. Dreams of speaking in foreign languages sometimes indicated divine communication or the need to understand different perspectives. Food and eating symbolism provided rich interpretive material for Memphis dream analysts.
Bread, the staff of life in Egyptian culture, generally represented basic sustenance, security, and divine provision.
Dreams of abundant bread suggested prosperity and security, while dreams of stale or absent bread might warn of economic difficulties or spiritual hunger.
Fish from the Nile carried positive associations with abundance and divine blessing, while dreams of catching fish often indicated success in endeavors or the acquisition of wisdom and knowledge.
Fruits in dreams typically represented the rewards of patient effort, with different fruits carrying specific meanings based on their seasonal associations and cultural significance. Dreams involving wine or other fermented beverages required careful interpretation, as these could represent either divine ecstasy and spiritual joy or warning about excess and loss of self-control.
The context and emotional tone of the dream were crucial factors in determining the appropriate interpretation.
The Memphis interpreters understood that symbolic meanings could be modified or reversed based on the overall emotional tone of the dream experience. A symbol that normally carried positive associations might become negative if experienced with feelings of fear or anxiety, while traditionally negative symbols might carry positive meanings if encountered in dreams filled with joy or peace. Seasonal timing also influenced symbolic interpretation, with certain symbols carrying enhanced significance during specific times of the year. Dreams of grain and harvest imagery were particularly meaningful during the growing season, while dreams of flooding or water abundance gained special significance during the time of inundation.
The social status, age, and gender of the dreamer provided additional context for symbolic interpretation.
Dreams of royal symbols might carry different meanings for actual rulers versus common citizens, while symbols related to childbirth and fertility would be interpreted differently for young women versus elderly men. The Memphis system of dream symbolism represented one of humanity's most sophisticated attempts to create a comprehensive interpretive framework for understanding the language of dreams, providing a foundation that would influence dream interpretation traditions for thousands of years to come. The Memphis dream interpreters understood that among all the various types of divine communication received through dreams, those relating to healing and medicine held special significance for human welfare. The temple complex maintained a specialized wing devoted entirely to what they called the sacred art of dream healing, where skilled practitioners combine their interpretive abilities with extensive medical knowledge to help those seeking relief from physical ailments and psychological disturbances. The theoretical foundation for dream healing rested on the Egyptian belief that illness originated from disruptions in the harmony between body, soul, and divine will.
When this harmony was disturbed by spiritual contamination, emotional imbalance, or failure to maintain proper relationships with the gods, the result was physical or mental disease.
Dreams were understood to be the primary means by which the divine realm communicated the nature of these disruptions and provided guidance for restoring healthy balance.
Healing dreams were categorized into several distinct types, each requiring different analytical approaches and therapeutic responses.
Diagnostic dreams revealed the spiritual or energetic causes underlying physical symptoms, often depicting symbolic representations of internal body processes, or showing the dreamer images that corresponded to specific medical conditions.
These dreams were particularly valued because they could identify problems that were not yet manifest in obvious physical symptoms, allowing for early intervention and prevention.
Prescription dreams provided specific instructions for treatments, whether through herbal remedies, dietary changes, ritual practices, or combinations of therapeutic approaches.
These dreams might show the dreamer gathering particular plants from specific locations, performing prescribed ceremonies, or following detailed instructions for preparing and using medicinal substances.
The Memphis healers maintained extensive records of prescription dreams and their outcomes, creating a database of divinely inspired treatments that had proven effective over time. Prognostic dreams offered insights into the likely course of illnesses, helping both healers and patients understand what to expect during recovery processes. These dreams might show symbolic representations of healing journeys, indicate the length of time required for recovery, or warn of potential complications that would require additional attention. Such dreams were particularly valuable for chronic conditions where understanding the long-term trajectory was essential for appropriate treatment planning. The Memphis Healing Dream Complex included specialized chambers designed specifically for medical dream incubation.
These rooms were constructed according to principles that the temple architects believed would enhance the healing properties of dreams experienced within them. The walls were painted with images of Imhotep, the deified physician and architect, along with other healing deities such as Sekhmet, Thoth, and Isis in her role as divine healer.
Each healing chamber contained a carefully positioned sleeping platform made from limestone that had been quarried from sites considered sacred to healing deities.
The platforms were oriented to channel what the Memphis healers believed were therapeutic earth energies, and were surrounded by channels that carried the continuous flow of sacred water and healing incense throughout the night hours. The preparation process for healing dream incubation was more elaborate than that used for general dream consultation.
Patients would undergo purification rituals that lasted 3 days, during which they would follow prescribed diets, participate in cleansing ceremonies, and engage in meditation practices designed to clear spiritual obstacles that might interfere with divine healing communications. The dietary preparation for healing dreams involved avoiding all foods that were considered spiritually heavy or likely to produce turbulent dream states. Red meat, fermented beverages, and highly spiced foods were prohibited, while the diet emphasized fresh fruits, vegetables grown in sacred temple gardens, bread made from carefully blessed grain, and fish caught from designated holy sections of the Nile.
Physical purification included daily ritual baths in water that had been infused with medicinal herbs and blessed by temple priests.
Different herbal combinations were used depending on the nature of the patient's condition, with cooling herbs for fever-related illnesses, calming herbs for nervous disorders, and strengthening herbs for conditions involving weakness or debility. Mental and spiritual preparation involved extensive consultation with dream interpreters who specialized in healing applications.
These sessions helped patients understand the spiritual dimensions of their conditions and prepared them mentally to receive and remember the divine guidance that would come through their dreams. Patients would also participate in prayer ceremonies asking specific healing deities for guidance and assistance.
The Memphis healers had developed a sophisticated understanding of how different types of medical conditions manifested in dream symbolism. Dreams about water often related to conditions involving the body's fluid balance, circulation, or purification processes. Clear, flowing water suggested healthy circulation and effective elimination of toxins, while stagnant or polluted water might indicate problems with kidney function, blood circulation, or the body's ability to cleanse itself of harmful substances. Dreams involving fire or heat typically related to fevers, inflammation, or conditions involving excessive internal heat. Gentle, warming fire might suggest the need for warming treatments or foods, while destructive or out-of-control fire could indicate dangerous inflammatory processes that required immediate cooling interventions. Animal symbolism in healing dreams carried specific medical meanings that had been developed through centuries of observation and correlation with treatment outcomes. Dreams of cats often related to conditions affecting women's reproductive health, while dreams of birds frequently appeared in connection with respiratory conditions or problems affecting the upper body regions. Dreams of snakes in medical contexts were particularly complex, as these creatures were associated with both poison and healing in Egyptian mythology. A snake that appeared threatening or aggressive might warn of hidden toxins or infections, while a peaceful or protective snake could indicate the need for snake-derived medicines or treatments that involved controlled exposure to potentially harmful substances. The Memphis medical dream interpreters maintained detailed case histories documenting the relationship between specific dream symbols and subsequent treatment outcomes.
These records allowed them to refine their understanding of healing dream symbolism and to develop increasingly accurate methods for translating divine communications into practical medical interventions.
Color symbolism in healing dreams provided important diagnostic and prognostic information. Red might indicate inflammation, fever, or blood-related conditions, while yellow could suggest liver problems or conditions involving bile production. Green often appeared in dreams related to growth, healing, and recovery, while black might indicate serious conditions requiring intensive treatment or warning of potential mortality. The treatment recommendations derived from healing dreams often combined multiple therapeutic modalities in ways that reflected the holistic Egyptian approach to medicine. A single prescription dream might recommend specific herbal remedies, dietary modifications, ritual practices, amulet wearing, and environmental changes such as moving to different climatic conditions or avoiding certain activities.
Herbal prescriptions received through dreams were particularly valued because they were believed to represent divine knowledge of plant properties that surpassed human understanding.
The Memphis healers maintained extensive medicinal gardens where they cultivated plants that had been revealed through healing dreams, often discovering new therapeutic applications for familiar plants or finding previously unknown medicinal properties. Dream-derived treatments frequently involved the use of amulets and talismans that were believed to channel healing energies or provide protection against the spiritual causes of illness. These objects were crafted according to specifications received in dreams, using materials and designs that had been divinely revealed. The effectiveness of such treatments was carefully monitored and documented, contributing to the growing body of knowledge about the practical applications of healing dreams. The Memphis healing dream tradition also recognized the importance of timing in medical treatments, with dreams often providing specific instructions about when treatments should be initiated, how long they should be continued, and what seasonal or lunar factors should be considered.
This temporal dimension of healing dreams reflected the Egyptian understanding that the body's healing processes were intimately connected with natural cycles and cosmic rhythms.
Psychological and emotional healing through dreams represented another sophisticated aspect of Memphis medical practice. The interpreters understood that mental disturbances could both cause and result from physical illness, and they developed specialized techniques for analyzing dreams that revealed psychological imbalances or emotional traumas that required therapeutic attention. Dreams that involved encounters with deceased family members often appeared in cases where unresolved grief or guilt was contributing to physical illness. The Memphis healers would help patients understand these dreams and provide guidance for addressing the emotional issues that were interfering with physical recovery. Recurring nightmares or disturbing dreams were understood to be symptoms of spiritual disturbance that required both interpretive analysis and protective interventions.
The healers would analyze the symbolic content of such dreams to identify their underlying causes and would prescribe protective rituals, amulets, or environmental changes designed to restore peaceful sleep and eliminate harmful spiritual influences.
The reputation of Memphis healing dream interpretation spread throughout the ancient Mediterranean world, attracting patients from distant lands who sought the specialized knowledge and techniques that had been developed at this remarkable center of medical and spiritual learning. The success of these treatments contributed to the broader influence of Egyptian medicine and established Memphis as one of the ancient world's most important centers for holistic healing practices.
The integration of dream interpretation with practical medical treatment at Memphis represented one of humanity's earliest systematic approaches to psychosomatic medicine, recognizing the intimate connections between spiritual, psychological, and physical dimensions of human health, and developing therapeutic methods that addressed all aspects of human wellness.
As the sun sets over the ancient ruins of Memphis, casting long shadows across the weathered stones that once housed the dream interpretation complex, we find ourselves at the end of our journey through this remarkable center of ancient wisdom. The legacy of the Memphis dream interpreters extends far beyond the boundaries of their time and place, creating ripples of influence that continue to shape human understanding of dreams and their significance. The methodical approach to dream analysis developed at Memphis established foundation principles that would influence dream interpretation traditions throughout the ancient world and beyond. The systematic cataloging of dream symbols, the careful observation of patterns and correlations, and the integration of astronomical, medical, and psychological factors into interpretive practice created a comprehensive framework that represented one of humanity's earliest scientific approaches to understanding consciousness and its nocturnal expressions. The training methods developed for Memphis dream interpreters became models for educational programs in other ancient centers of learning. The combination of scholarly study, practical experience, and spiritual development that characterized their educational approach influenced the development of priesthood training programs throughout Egypt and neighboring civilizations. The emphasis on careful observation, detailed record keeping, and collaborative analysis established precedents for scholarly methodology that would prove influential in many fields of human knowledge. The therapeutic applications of dream interpretation pioneered at Memphis contributed significantly to the development of ancient medicine and healing practices. The recognition that physical symptoms could have spiritual or psychological origins, and that dreams could provide valuable diagnostic and therapeutic information, represented an early form of holistic medicine that acknowledged the interconnectedness of body, mind, and spirit in human health and illness. The Memphis tradition of dream incubation, where individuals would sleep in sacred spaces specifically to receive healing or guidance dreams, established practices that spread throughout the Mediterranean world. Similar dream temples were established in Greece, Rome, and other ancient civilizations, often directly inspired by Egyptian models and sometimes staffed by priests who had trained in Memphis or other Egyptian centers. The influence of Memphis dream interpretation can be traced in the works of ancient Greek and Roman writers who studied Egyptian wisdom traditions. Philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle incorporated Egyptian insights about dreams and consciousness into their own theoretical frameworks, while medical writers like Hippocrates and Galen drew upon Egyptian understanding of the relationship between dreams and physical health. The extensive library of dream texts and interpretations developed at Memphis provided source material for later compilations and studies of dream symbolism. Elements of Memphis dream interpretation methodology can be found in medieval Islamic dream interpretation texts, Jewish mystical traditions, and even in some aspects of modern psychological approaches to dream analysis. The Memphis interpreters' understanding of the relationship between dreams and cultural context established important precedents for cross-cultural dream studies. Their recognition that dream symbolism could vary based on the dreamer's background, occupation, and life circumstances demonstrated a sophisticated awareness of how cultural factors influence psychological and spiritual experiences. The architectural innovations developed for the Memphis Dream Complex influenced the design of later sacred and therapeutic buildings throughout the ancient world. The careful attention to orientation, acoustics, air circulation, and environmental factors that characterized Memphis construction techniques was adopted and adapted for temples, healing centers, and other specialized buildings in various ancient civilizations. The record-keeping and documentation practices established at Memphis created one of the ancient world's most comprehensive databases of human psychological and spiritual experiences. The detailed case histories, follow-up studies, and systematic analysis of treatment outcomes represented an early form of empirical research that provided valuable insights into human consciousness and behavior. The Memphis tradition of collaborative analysis, where multiple interpreters would discuss and debate complex cases, established precedents for peer review and consultation practices that remain important in many professional fields today. The emphasis on continuous learning, sharing of insights, and collective problem-solving created models for professional development that have proven their value across centuries. The integration of multiple disciplines that characterized Memphis dream interpretation, combining religious knowledge, medical understanding, astronomical observation, and psychological insight,
established precedents for interdisciplinary approaches to human problems that remain relevant in contemporary practice.
The recognition that complex human issues require multiple perspectives and varied forms of expertise was a sophisticated insight that anticipated modern approaches to healthcare, counseling, and spiritual guidance. The Memphis interpreters' respect for the individual experiences and circumstances of their clients established ethical standards for therapeutic relationships that influenced later traditions of healing and counseling. Their careful attention to confidentiality, their sensitivity to cultural differences, and their commitment to providing genuine help rather than exploitation created models for professional behavior that have enduring value. The preservation and transmission of Memphis dream wisdom through written texts, oral traditions, and apprenticeship programs demonstrated the importance of maintaining knowledge across generations. The methods they developed for copying, storing, and protecting important texts contributed to the preservation of ancient wisdom that might otherwise have been lost to time and circumstance. The Memphis tradition of viewing dreams as meaningful communications worthy of careful study and respectful attention established perspectives on human consciousness that challenged purely materialistic explanations of mental phenomena. Their recognition that dreams could provide valuable information about health, relationships, and life decisions suggested that human consciousness possessed dimensions and capabilities that deserved serious investigation. The practical applications of Memphis dream interpretation in agriculture, commerce, governance, and personal decision-making demonstrated the potential value of intuitive and symbolic thinking in addressing practical problems. Their integration of dream guidance with rational analysis provided models for balanced decision-making that honored both analytical and intuitive approaches to problem-solving. The Memphis interpreters' understanding of the relationship between individual dreams and collective experiences established early recognition of what modern psychology might call the collective unconscious. Their observation that similar dream themes appeared across different individuals during times of social or environmental change suggested that human consciousness was connected to broader patterns and influences beyond individual experience. The spiritual dimensions of Memphis dream interpretation contributed to the development of mystical and contemplative traditions throughout the ancient world. Their recognition that dreams could provide direct access to divine wisdom and guidance influenced the development of meditation practices, visionary traditions, and mystical theology in various religious systems. As we conclude our exploration of the Memphis dream interpreters and their remarkable contributions to human knowledge and understanding, we are reminded that the questions they addressed remain relevant to contemporary life. How do we understand the relationship between consciousness and physical reality? What is the significance of symbolic thinking and intuitive insight? How can we integrate spiritual awareness with practical decision-making? How do we maintain balance between individual needs and collective wisdom? The gentle wisdom of the Memphis dream interpreters, preserved in their careful observations and thoughtful practices, continues to offer valuable insights for those seeking to understand the deeper dimensions of human experience. Their legacy reminds us that the boundary between sleeping and waking consciousness may be more permeable than we often assume, and that the images and experiences that visit us in dreams may carry meanings and messages worthy of our careful attention and respectful consideration. In the quiet chambers where they once worked, surrounded by the tools of their sacred craft and guided by their dedication to understanding and service, the dream interpreters of Memphis created a tradition of wisdom that spans the centuries, offering gentle guidance to all who seek to understand the mysterious and meaningful world of dreams. As our journey through the dream temples of Memphis draws to a close, we find ourselves enriched by the gentle wisdom of these ancient interpreters who understood that the world of sleep held meanings worthy of our deepest attention and respect. Their patient dedication to understanding the language of dreams
their compassionate service to those seeking guidance, and their scholarly approach to documenting and preserving this knowledge created a legacy that continues to inspire us today.
The dream interpreters of Memphis remind us that there are rhythms to life that move more slowly than our busy modern world often allows. Rhythms of observation, contemplation, and quiet understanding. They show us that some of the most profound insights come not from rushing toward answers, but from sitting peacefully with questions and allowing wisdom to emerge in its own gentle time. As you drift toward your own sleep tonight, perhaps you carry with you something of their reverent approach to the world of dreams.
Maybe you'll remember that the images and stories that visit you in sleep might hold their own quiet significance, deserving of the same patient attention that the priests of Memphis offered to every dreamer who came to their peaceful chambers seeking understanding. The ancient city of Memphis may have crumbled into ruins beside the Nile, but the gentle wisdom of its dream interpreters lives on, reminding us that in a world that often moves too fast, there is still value in moving slowly, in listening carefully, and in treating the mysterious experiences of our sleeping minds with the respect and wonder they deserve.
Thank you for joining me on this peaceful journey through ancient Egypt.
May your dreams be filled with the same serene wisdom that guided the interpreters of Memphis, and may you find in your sleep the same gentle revelations that they helped others discover over 3,000 years ago. Until our next journey through history's quiet corners, sleep well and dream peacefully.